The hospital room was eerily quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of machines that monitored the fragile woman lying in the bed. Her name was Adama, once the proud matriarch of a multi-million-dollar empire, but now reduced to this, imprisoned by her own body, confined to a wheelchair, and betrayed by the man she had loved for over 2 decades. Kola, her husband of 15 years, stood at the door. He glanced at his wife, his gaze cold, indifferent, and then at the woman beside him. The woman was young, beautiful, and dripping with the kind of wealth that Adama's empire could never match. He was leaving. "I'm sorry, Adama, but it's over. I've found someone who truly understands me." Kola's voice was a mix of bitterness and finality. He turned away, ready to walk out of the life that he had shared with his wife for years. "Please, Kola, don't do this." Adama's voice trembled, weak from the toll her illness had taken. "I built this empire for us, for you. Don't throw it all away for this woman." But Kola didn't flinch. He was already halfway through the door. He turned to look at her one last time, his expression full of cold indifference. "I need a new life, Adama. One that you can't give me. I'm marrying her, and there's nothing you can do about it." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Adama alone in her sterile hospital room. The machines beeped louder now, almost mocking her helplessness. But in that moment, something inside her snapped. The pain of betrayal, the years of sacrifice, the deceit, everything surged through her. She was no longer the woman who had built an empire only to be discarded. She was a woman on the edge of reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Kola had left her, but what he didn't know was that Adama still had control. She would take back her empire, and she would make him regret ever turning his back on her. Adama had always been the ambitious one. She and Kola had started with nothing, 2 young lovers with big dreams. It was Adama's vision, her strength, and relentless determination that transformed a small family business into one of the largest real estate empires in West Africa. The properties they owned spanned across Nigeria, with investments in other African countries too. She had built this all, not for the recognition, but for a future, one she envisioned sharing with Kola. But the more successful they became, the more Kola changed. He had once been humble, grateful for the opportunities Adama had given him, but over time, he grew hungry for more. More money, more recognition, and more women. The betrayal had started small, a few whispers, a few long business trips. But one day, Adama had caught him red-handed, a new mistress in the luxurious hotel suite they had shared for their anniversary. At first, Kola had tried to deny it, but the lies became too much, and eventually, he confessed. He had been seeing her for months, long before Adama's illness had even started. Kola had always been weak, though, and in the face of his wife's growing illness, he had been unable to handle the weight of responsibility. His selfishness had led him down a path where he felt justified in abandoning her. Adama's condition had only worsened, leaving her paralyzed and dependent on others. But Adama was not the type of woman to be defeated by circumstances. She had climbed from nothing to everything, and now, even in her weakened state, she would climb again. The shock of the betrayal, however, was not enough to make her forget her true power. She had always kept control of the business, at least in name, but Kola had always been the public face of their empire. Now, she would take back her place as the rightful owner. Adama pressed a button beside her bed, summoning her trusted lawyer, Cheek. When he entered, she looked him dead in the eyes. "It's time. I want my empire back." Cheek, who had worked for Adama since she had founded her business, looked at her with wide eyes, almost hesitant. "But Adama, Kola, he's married her. You know what that means. It's not just the money anymore. He's in love with her." Adama's lips curled into a sly smile. "I built this empire with my own hands, Chike, and no woman, no matter how rich, will take it from me. I don't care if Kola's married her. He's nothing but a pawn in a game I control. And now, it's time to take back what's mine." As the realization of her resolve sank in, Cheek's expression shifted. The wheels were turning, and what would follow next would be nothing short of devastating for Kola. Pause the story for a moment. What would you have done in Adama's position? Would you have let the betrayal go, or would you fight back for what you've worked so hard for? Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intense, thrilling stories like this one. The weight of betrayal had never been so heavy on Adama's chest. As the days dragged on in that sterile hospital room, she grew more determined, more resolute. Each time the nurses came in to check on her, their bright, sterile faces seemed a reminder of just how weak she had become. They didn't know who she really was. None of them knew the woman who had once ruled an empire. Kola's actions had wounded her deeply, but they had also ignited something within her, a fire that she hadn't known existed. For all his charm and manipulation, Kola was still just a man. He had no idea who he was dealing with when it came to Adama. Adama had spent years building her empire from the ground up, and Kola had watched it all unfold, his role growing more passive with every success. She had given him power, wealth, and status, but in the end, all of it meant nothing to him. His greed and his lust for a new life had led him to betray the very woman who had given him everything. Adama's thoughts were interrupted by the soft click of the door opening. Cheek, her trusted lawyer, entered the room with a briefcase in hand, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a look of concern. He had known Adama for years. He had watched her rise from a small businesswoman to one of the wealthiest and most influential women in Africa. To him, Adama was a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable. But even he knew that this was different. This was personal. "How are you feeling today, Adama?" Cheeky asked softly, setting the briefcase down on the bedside table. "I'm fine," Adama replied curtly. Her voice, though weak, carried an undertone of steely resolve. "I need you to start the process." Cheek raised an eyebrow. "The process? You mean?" "Everything." Adama interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "I want everything. The properties, the companies, the shares, everything that Kola and I built together. I'm taking it all back." Cheeky hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "Adama, I know you're angry, but—" "I'm not angry, Cheek," Adama snapped. "I'm done. He left me for her, the woman who he thinks can give him more. But Kola doesn't know what's coming. He doesn't know that I can take it all back. And this time, he won't be able to stop me." Cheek sat down beside her, his face serious. "You know that the law isn't on your side here, Adama. You were married, but the divorce papers have been filed. The assets are split. He's got his new life with her, and what? You think I'm just going to sit here and let him walk away with everything I've worked for?" Adama's eyes glinted with cold fury. "This isn't just about the money, Cheeky. This is about my dignity, my empire. I'm not going to let Kola or this woman, whoever she is, take what belongs to me." There was a brief silence as Cheeky absorbed the weight of her words. He had seen Adama in action before. He had seen how she built the empire from scratch, how she had fought tooth and nail to turn every setback into a victory. But this was different. This wasn't just a business deal. This was personal. This was war. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" Cheek asked quietly. "More than you know," Adama replied, her voice low and steady. "I want every legal document, every share, every company car, every piece of land. I want everything that Kola thought he could take from me." Cheeky nodded slowly, his eyes focused on hers. He had no doubt that Adama would do whatever it took to get what she wanted. He had seen her fight before, but this time, it was different. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about revenge. And in Adama's world, revenge was something she excelled at. As the days passed, Adama's plan began to take shape. She used her connections, contacts she had carefully cultivated over the years, to gather information. She met with her trusted financial advisors, those who had been with her from the beginning, and together they began to assess the extent of Kola's betrayal. The first piece of the puzzle came when she received a copy of the latest divorce papers, which Kola had signed just days before abandoning her. The terms were clear. Kola had claimed half of their joint assets, including the luxury estates, the multi-million-dollar hotels, the shares in companies they both owned. But Adama was not one to be bound by a simple piece of paper. "Chike," she said as she sat up in her bed, "I want you to use these divorce papers against him. I want you to make it clear that the assets in question are mine, all of them." Chike looked at the papers and then back at Adama, his expression one of admiration. "I've never seen you like this before. You're relentless." "Relentless is what I need to be," Adama replied. "Kola thought he could steal everything from me. He thought he could take my wealth, my legacy, and my empire. But what he didn't realize was that the very foundation of it all is still in my hands." As Chike worked on the legal paperwork, Adama continued to plot. She knew Kola would fight back. He had too much pride to let her walk away with everything. But Adama was prepared. She had always been 10 steps ahead, and this time, she would make sure Kola would pay the price for underestimating her. But the legal battle was just one part of the plan. Adama also had to contend with the new woman in Kola's life, the one he had chosen over her. Adama knew nothing about her, except that she had the wealth and status that Kola had craved. But Adama was no stranger to power. She knew that in this world, power wasn't just about money. It was about influence, control, and who you knew. Adama made a decision. She would take back what was hers, but she would do it in a way that Kola would never see coming. Cliffhanger. As the days turned into weeks, Adama's strategy began to unfold. The first step was securing her position in the family businesses. The second step was to destroy Kola's credibility in the public eye. But the third step, what would truly make him pay, was yet to come. In a meeting with her lawyer, Chike, Adama laid out her final move. "Get ready," she said, a smirk curling on her lips. "Because soon, Kola will realize that he's not the one in control anymore." Chike raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Adama's eyes gleamed with the promise of what was to come. "You'll see. He won't know what hit him." As the camera pulled away from her intense expression, the screen went black. The days that followed were a blur of legal battles, strategic meetings, and late-night planning sessions. Adama was no longer the frail woman she had once been. Her illness had taken a backseat to her thirst for revenge. The wheelchair that had confined her body seemed to serve as a reminder of just how far she had fallen. But Adama was using it as fuel. She would show them all. Kola had left her in her darkest moment. But what he didn't know was that it was her greatest strength. Every setback, every moment of doubt, every betrayal was now a weapon in her hands. Chike was with her every step of the way, his loyalty unwavering. Though his role was that of a lawyer, he had become more than just an advisor. He was her confidant, her silent partner in this war. He helped her craft the strategy, ensuring that each move was calculated to hit Kola where it would hurt the most. Adama's first move was a calculated one. She reached out to the board members of the companies that Kola had once controlled. They all knew her. They respected her. Most of them, if not all, had been brought into the business world by Adama herself. One by one, they started to receive letters from Adama's legal team, advising them that Kola's authority over the companies was now under dispute. When the first wave of board members sided with her, the ground beneath Kola's feet began to shift. He had once been the face of their empire, but now, that empire was crumbling from within. Kola had been caught off guard. He never expected Adama to move so swiftly. He had assumed that once the divorce was finalized and their assets split, he would be free to marry his new mistress and live the life he had always dreamed of. But he was wrong. Kola had thought he could leave Adama behind, that the empire they built together would be his to control. But now, Adama was using his own wealth against him. The board members, who once trusted him, were turning their backs. His business partners were whispering in the halls, and his reputation was starting to crumble. He felt the walls closing in, but Kola wasn't the type to give up easily. He had always been a fighter, at least when he had something to fight for. And now he had his new mistress to protect. He couldn't afford to lose everything. He couldn't afford for Adama to take back control. The tension between them built steadily. Kola knew Adama was a force to be reckoned with, but he never thought she would have the tenacity to fight back this hard. He had underestimated her in the worst possible way. One evening, Kola called his mistress, Layla, to meet him at his apartment. He needed her reassurance. As Layla stepped into the sleek, modern apartment, she smiled at Kola, her long, wavy hair falling perfectly around her face. She had the kind of beauty that took people's breath away. But Kola was distracted. His mind was racing, his thoughts torn between anger and fear. "I'm sorry, Kola," Layla said, noticing the tension in his voice. "But what are we going to do? Adama is taking everything, the businesses, the houses, the money." Kola's eyes flashed. "She can't do this. She doesn't have the right. She's just a sick woman in a wheelchair. She can't possibly keep control of everything." Layla walked over to him and placed her hand on his arm. "You need to calm down. We'll figure this out. You'll take back everything you've lost." Kola shook his head. "I should have never let her go. She was the brains behind everything. I thought I could take what she built, but I didn't realize how much power she still had. I can't let her win. I won't let her destroy everything I've worked for." Layla looked at him, her expression softening. "We'll fix this, but you have to act quickly. You don't want her to get too much control. Adama can be a dangerous woman when she's pushed too far." Kola's face hardened. "I know." But little did Kola know, his every move was being tracked by Adama. She had eyes everywhere. Nothing in this battle would be left to chance. Back in the hospital room, Adama's strategy continued to unfold. The letters to the board members had been the first phase. The second phase, however, was more personal. Adama knew that Kola's pride was his greatest weakness. He could handle business setbacks. He could handle losing a few million. But when it came to his image, his reputation, his ego, that was where Adama could truly hurt him. Through her network, Adama learned that Kola had been making moves behind the scenes to secure his hold on their shared assets. But she had anticipated this. She had already set the wheels in motion for a move that would leave Kola with nothing. Adama instructed Chiki to contact a few key people, bankers, real estate moguls, and other influential figures, to prepare for a sudden legal shift. It was time to put Kola in a position where he would have no choice but to submit to her terms. But just as Adama was about to execute her plan, she received an unexpected visitor. It was a familiar face. A face that, in another life, had been a trusted confidant. "Adama," the man said, stepping into the room. "It's been a long time." Adama looked at him, her gaze calculating. "Uche," she replied coldly. "What brings you here?" Uche was a former associate, one of Kola's business partners who had always been loyal to her in the past. But now, as the walls closed in on Kola, Uche was caught between loyalty and self-preservation. "I've come to offer you a deal," Uche said, his voice low. "Kola is in deeper than he realizes, and I think it's time for us to settle things. I want in. I want to work with you." Adama studied him carefully, trying to read his intentions. "You want to work with me?" she asked, skeptical. "Why now? Why not before?" Uche shifted uncomfortably. "I know where this is headed, Adama. Kola is a sinking ship. You're the one who's going to come out on top, and I want a piece of that. I have information, connections, things Kola doesn't know about. I'm offering you an alliance. You take back everything he stole from you, and I'll help you make sure he never sees the light of day." Adama's lips curled into a smile. "You think you can help me take down Kola? What makes you think I need your help?" Uche's eyes gleamed with hidden knowledge. "Because I know about the will. Kola doesn't know everything, but you do. And if you want to take back your empire, this is the key." Cliffhanger. Adama's heart skipped a beat. She knew what Uche was referring to. There was a secret will, one that Kola never knew about, a will that would change everything. But she needed more. She needed to know where Uche was coming from. Could she trust him? Could she use him to her advantage without risking her empire? As the realization of the will's power sank in, the screen went black. Adama lay still in her hospital bed, her mind racing as she processed Uche's offer. The revelation of the will was both a shock and an opportunity. Kola had thought he had it all. He had taken everything, or so he thought. But now, it seemed there was one last card to play, one that Adama could use to finally take back control. She looked at Uche, his face partially obscured by the dim light of the room. His words echoed in her mind. I know about the will. Kola doesn't know everything, but you do. And if you want to take back your empire, this is the key. But the question lingered in her mind. Could she trust Uche? He had once been a loyal associate, but loyalty was often a fleeting thing, especially when there were fortunes at stake. Adama's empire was worth hundreds of millions, and there were many who would do anything to have a piece of it. Her thoughts were interrupted by Uche's voice. Adama, I know this is hard to believe, but I'm on your side. Kola has been making moves behind your back. He's desperate. I'm offering you the chance to crush him. Adama narrowed her eyes, considering his words. What's in it for you, Uche? She asked, her voice cold but steady. Why should I believe you? You've spent all these years aligning yourself with Kola, and now you expect me to trust you. Uche shifted uncomfortably in his chair. You're right to be cautious, but the truth is Kola's run his course. His betrayal of you was the final straw. I have no loyalty to him anymore. He's blind to what's really going on, and you're the only one who can take him down now. Adama felt the anger rising within her once more. Kola had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way, and now he was going to pay. But before she could respond, Uche placed a small envelope on the bedside table. I brought something with me. You'll want to see this, he said, his voice tinged with urgency. Adama reached for the envelope, her hands shaking slightly. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the will, a document that Kola never knew about. The words on the paper were clear. The will had been signed and notarized years ago, long before Adama's illness had taken a toll on her. The will named her as the sole beneficiary of their empire, while Kola was only entitled to a small fraction of the wealth they had built together. Kola had always thought the empire was divided in half, but this will proved otherwise. The empire was hers. Her breath caught in her throat as the gravity of the moment hit her. Kola had been living a lie thinking he had control, but Adama was the true owner of everything. A smile curled on her lips, a dark satisfaction building within her. She had known all along that Kola underestimated her, but now she had the ultimate weapon, something Kola could never take away. Now we move, she said, her voice low and determined. This is just the beginning. For the next few days, Adama and Uche worked in secret. They reached out to the board members who had previously sided with Kola, reminding them of the true ownership of the empire. They began to prepare the legal documents that would strip Kola of his power and reassert Adama's control. The media was informed of Kola's betrayal, and whispers spread quickly through the business world. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Adama couldn't help but wonder if Kola had already realized what was happening. He was a proud man, and pride always had a way of making people blind to the truth. But no matter what Kola did, Adama had already won. The empire was hers, and soon, Kola would have nothing. Meanwhile, Kola was sitting in his luxury apartment surrounded by his new mistress, Layla. But despite the lavish surroundings, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Adama's silence was unnerving, and he knew she wasn't the type to just roll over and accept defeat. What's going on, Kola? Layla asked, sensing the tension in the air. Why are you so tense? Kola ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his voice. I don't know, Layla, I feel like something's coming. Adama is up to something. She's not going to let go of the empire so easily. Layla looked at him, concern crossing her face. Kola, you've got to stop worrying about her. You're free now. You've got me and we can build our future together. The empire doesn't matter anymore. Kola shook his head, a dark look crossing his face. It does matter, Layla. It always has. And Adama, she's not going to let go without a fight. He was right. Adama was not the type to back down. Adama sat back in her wheelchair, gazing out the window of her hospital room. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the city. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. She had taken control, and Kola was going to regret ever abandoning her. But as she sat there lost in thought, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her heart skipped a beat. It was a message from her lawyer. Adama, the message began. I've just received word that Kola is filing an injunction. He's trying to block the will. He's taking this to court. Her stomach churned. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but the fact that Kola was going to fight her in court made everything so much more complicated. Damn it, Adama muttered under her breath. But then, the fire inside her flared again. Kola thought he could beat her. He thought he could stop her. Adama had built this empire from nothing. She had fought tooth and nail for everything she had, and she wasn't about to let Kola, or anyone else, take it from her. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Chiki. Prepare for battle. We're going to make sure Kola never sees the light of day in this empire again. As Adama looked out over the city, she felt an unfamiliar sense of calm. She had fought battles before, but this one was personal. Kola had underestimated her. He had thought he could walk away from the life they had built together, but now it was time for him to pay. But as the tension mounted, something unexpected happened. A figure emerged from the shadows, someone who knew all too well the depths of Kola's betrayal. And just as Adama was about to take the next step in her revenge, the door to her hospital room opened. It was a figure she hadn't expected to see. It was Kola. And this time, he wasn't alone. The tension in the room was palpable as Kola entered. His expression was one of determination, but there was something in his eyes that betrayed a flicker of doubt. He had always prided himself on his ability to control every situation, to keep his cards close to his chest. But now, standing before Adama in her hospital room, he felt exposed. Adama looked up at him, her face expressionless. She was no longer the woman he had married, the woman who had stood by him, supported him, and built the empire with him. She was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who had been broken but had pieced herself back together into something formidable. What are you doing here, Kola? Adama's voice was cold, her tone sharp. Kola hesitated, his eyes darting to the door as if he was unsure of the welcome he'd receive. Behind him stood two of his lawyers, a middle-aged man and a younger woman, both wearing grim expressions. They had been with him through the darkest parts of his marriage with Adama, always ready to fight for his side. But this time they were walking into unknown territory. They had no idea what Adama had up her sleeve. I'm here to talk, Adama, Kola said, his voice surprisingly calm. I want to settle this, amicably. I've already started the process to take back what's rightfully mine, but I thought we could avoid a public court battle. You know how these things go. It's ugly. Adama's lips curled into a slight smile. She had been waiting for this moment. The moment Kola would try to manipulate her into giving up. But this time she wasn't the same woman. She was no longer the one who would bend to his will. Amicably? Adama echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her. You left me, Kola. You abandoned me in my weakest moment, and now you come to me talking about an amicable settlement? Kola's eyes flickered with guilt, but he quickly masked it. I never wanted it to be like this, Adama. You know that. But things have changed. I've found someone else. Layla. She's the future. You can't expect me to give up everything for a marriage that no longer works. Adama narrowed her eyes, feeling a surge of anger rise within her. How could he stand there, in front of her, and justify everything he had done? How could he act as if she were the one who had wronged him? And you think she'll be able to take over what we built? Adama's voice was a dangerous whisper. You think she'll understand the empire we created? She doesn't have the strength to keep it going. She doesn't have the vision. She'll watch it all crumble under her hands, but not me, Kola. I built this empire, and I'll take it back. Kola's face flushed with frustration. You're being stubborn, Adama. You can't take everything back. The law doesn't favor you anymore. You can't just walk into my life and claim ownership of it. Adama chuckled softly. The law doesn't favor me? You seem to forget, Kola, that there's a will you know nothing about. A will that makes me the sole owner of everything you think you have. Kola froze. His eyes widened in shock, and for the first time he seemed genuinely rattled. What do you mean by that? I mean, Adama said slowly, savoring the moment, that the empire isn't yours. It never was. You were always just the face of it, Kola. But now, the truth is coming to light, and you'll be left with nothing but your mistakes. The room fell silent for a moment as Kola processed her words. He glanced at his lawyers, who exchanged uncertain looks. Adama could see the fear creeping into his eyes. He had thought he was the one in control, that his new life with Layla would be all that mattered. But Adama had just flipped the script, and Kola was beginning to understand the gravity of what he had done. His lawyer, the middle-aged man, cleared his throat and stepped forward. Adama, with all due respect, you can't just assume control over everything based on a will. There are legal processes, court hearings, settlements. I don't need your advice, Adama interrupted sharply. And I certainly don't need a man who has been complicit in Kola's betrayal. The law may have failed me in some areas, but it will never be able to stop what's coming. Kola has made his bed. Now he'll lie in it. Kola's anger flared. You'll regret this, Adama. You're playing a dangerous game. Adama leaned back in her wheelchair, her gaze never leaving his. The only game I'm playing, Kola, is one where I win. And you've already lost. As Kola stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him, Adama allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had said what needed to be said. And now, the battle was set. Kola thought he had the upper hand, but Adama knew something he didn't. She was going to take back everything. Chike, who had been quietly observing the exchange, turned to her and nodded. He's shaken. But this won't be easy, Adama. Kola won't back down without a fight. He'll drag this out as much as he can. Adama smiled, her eyes filled with a fire that was impossible to extinguish. Let him try. I've already won. Just as Adama began to relax, a call came through on her phone. It was a number she didn't recognize. She picked up, her fingers trembling slightly as she answered. Hello? A voice on the other end was soft, almost whispering. Adama, this is Nia. I have information about Kola, something that could change everything. Adama's pulse quickened. What is it? She demanded. Nia's voice became more urgent. Meet me tonight. I'll explain everything. But be careful. Kola's not the only one you need to worry about. Adama's heart skipped a beat. What could this woman possibly know that would alter the course of her plans? And who else besides Kola was involved in this web of betrayal? As the call ended, Adama's mind raced. The game had just become even more dangerous. The night was colder than usual, the air thick with tension. Adama's mind raced as she prepared for the meeting with Nia, the mysterious woman who had just called with an offer of critical information about Kola. What could she possibly know that would change everything? Adama had already secured the will, was reclaiming control of the empire, and had made it clear to Kola that he had no power left. But something in Nia's voice had sparked a deep unease in her. Adama didn't trust easily, especially after all that had happened. She had learned to trust only herself. but the prospect of uncovering something that could potentially bring Kola to his knees once and for all was too tempting to ignore. She wheeled herself out of the hospital room, Cheek accompanying her as always. He had been her unwavering ally through every legal and business decision. They both knew that nothing would be simple, that Kola would fight tooth and nail to keep what he believed was his, but they were prepared to face him head-on. Now it seemed that Nia was the key to unlocking the next phase of their plan. The night was dark as they made their way to a quiet cafe in the outskirts of Lagos, far from the prying eyes of the press and any associates of Kola. Adama's heart pounded with anticipation as they entered, scanning the room for the woman who had reached out to her. And there she was, Nia, a tall, slender woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, her short hair sleek and well-kept. She sat alone at a corner table, her eyes darting nervously as if she too feared being seen. As Adama approached, Nia stood, her posture stiff, but her eyes betrayed an urgency. "Adama, thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice quiet but urgent. "I wasn't sure you'd come, but what I have to tell you, it could change everything." Adama's gaze hardened. "I don't like being kept in the dark, Nia. What do you know about Kola that I don't?" Nia glanced around the room cautiously before sitting back down. Cheek stood off to the side, his eyes trained on the door and the few patrons lingering in the cafe, ready for any sign of trouble. "First," Nia began, "I need you to understand that I'm not here because I want anything from you. I'm here because Kola has been hiding something. He's not the man you think he is, Adama. He's been involved in something far worse than you can imagine." Adama's heart skipped. This wasn't the first time she had heard rumors of Kola's shady dealings, but she wasn't prepared for what Nia was about to say next. "I worked for Kola's company as a junior analyst a few years ago, and in my position, I had access to financial records, internal reports, everything. But what I uncovered, it's far more sinister than a mere business dispute or infidelity." Nia paused, her hands trembling slightly. "Kola, he's been laundering money for years. He's involved in illegal business ventures, things that could destroy not just him, but everyone who's ever been associated with him. He's been hiding millions, hundreds of millions, stashed in offshore accounts. And it doesn't stop there." Adama leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. This was something she hadn't expected. "How do you know all of this, Nia?" Nia swallowed hard. "Because I found the documents. I'm the one who uncovered his connections to shady offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, tax evasion schemes, and even connections to organized crime in some regions of West Africa. He thought he was untouchable. But I've been gathering evidence, slowly, over the last few months. And it's all here." Nia slid a folder across the table, filled with bank statements, emails, and legal documents. Adama's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the folder. As she flipped through the papers, her mind raced. This was bigger than Kola's betrayal. This was a web of corruption that extended far beyond their marriage. "What do you want from me?" Adama asked, her voice steady but laced with suspicion. Nia leaned in closer. "I want to make sure Kola pays for everything. I want to see him brought down, not just for what he did to you, but for everything he's done to others. But I can't do this alone. I need your help. Together, we can destroy him." Adama studied Nia carefully. She could sense the desperation in the woman's voice, but she also recognized an opportunity. If Nia was telling the truth, this was the leverage Adama needed to finally take Kola down once and for all. The idea of destroying Kola's empire, his ill-gotten gains, was intoxicating. "And why should I trust you?" Adama asked, her voice low, her eyes locking onto Nia's. "You've been working with him. For years." Nia's eyes softened. "I've always known what he was. But I stayed because I didn't have a choice. I didn't think anyone could take him down, not until I saw what he did to you. I realized I had to do something. I had to expose him, no matter the cost." Adama paused, her mind racing. Cola's empire was built on lies, greed, and corruption. If this was true, it wasn't just about taking back what he had stolen from her. It was about dismantling everything he had built on the backs of others. "I'll help you," Adama said, her voice steady. "But we do this my way. No more secrets. No more lies." Nia nodded eagerly, a faint smile crossing her lips. "I understand. And thank you, Adama. I swear, you won't regret this." As the two women sat in the dimly lit cafe, the gears of a plan began to turn. Adama wasn't just taking back her empire anymore. She was going to bring Cola's entire world crashing down. She would expose him for what he truly was. Back at her hospital room, Adama wasted no time. She ordered Chiki to prepare for a more aggressive legal approach. She wasn't just going to fight for her empire, she was going to ensure Cola lost everything. She would file the necessary motions to freeze his accounts, file a restraining order against him, and ensure the media got hold of every little detail she could expose. She wasn't just going to play the victim anymore. She was going to make sure Cola paid for his treachery. Every lie, every betrayal, every penny of his ill-gotten wealth. Adama would strip him of it all. And soon, she would make him realize that abandoning her was the biggest mistake of his life. But as Adama prepared to take action, she received another unexpected call. This time, it was from an anonymous source. "You're closer than you think, Adama," the voice on the other end said cryptically. "But be careful. You're not the only one looking to bring Cola down. There are others involved, and they're watching." Adama's heart sank. Who else could be involved? And why were they watching her? Before she could ask more questions, the line went dead. The mystery deepened. The night stretched on as Adama sat in her hospital room, trying to make sense of the cryptic phone call she had just received. Who could possibly be involved in Cola's scheme besides the people she already knew? She had suspected that Cola's actions ran deeper than just his betrayal of her, but the idea that someone else, someone unknown, was watching her now only made the situation even more dangerous. Cheek, who had been by her side through this entire ordeal, was pacing the room, his face troubled. He had heard the call too, and it had unsettled him as much as it had Adama. They had been prepared for Cola's fight, but now there was the unknown factor of others being involved. Adama set the phone down and leaned back in her chair, her eyes closing as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. She had come so far, done everything she could to take back control of her empire, and now, this shadowy threat seemed to loom over her, threatening to undo everything. "Cheeky," Adama said, her voice steady. "What do we know about Cola's other dealings? You've been with me for years. You know the extent of the empire, but do we know anything about his ties outside of what we've seen?" Cheek paused, running a hand through his hair. He had been close to Cola at one point, trusted by him. But in the years leading up to the betrayal, even Chike had distanced himself from Cola, sensing something dark beneath his former friend's charming exterior. "I know Cola has always been ambitious. He was never content with what we built, Adama. But I never imagined it would go this far. I mean, I knew about some shady investments, but nothing like what Nia told you. Nothing about organized crime or offshore accounts tied to his name." Adama clenched her fists. "He's built his empire on lies and deception. He's probably been doing business with criminals, with the kind of people I never wanted to be associated with. But if he's managed to hide it all this time, there's no telling who he's made deals with. We need to find out who else is involved, before they find us first." Her eyes narrowed as she looked out the window at the city lights. Lagos was full of secrets, dark corners that even the most powerful people couldn't escape. Adama had always been able to navigate the undercurrents of power, but now she felt like she was in over her head. The next day, Adama took her plans a step further. She was no longer just reacting to Cola's moves, she was setting her own traps. She began making calls, reaching out to her trusted allies within her company and beyond. Adama's network stretched far and wide. She had spent years building relationships with the right people, both in business and in law enforcement. It was time to use that network to her advantage. Meanwhile, Cheek worked tirelessly on the legal front, preparing the motions to freeze Cola's accounts and prevent him from transferring any assets. They were closing in on him, and every day that passed, Adama grew more certain that this fight was hers to win. But just as they were getting ready to file the court motions, another message came through. This one, more urgent than the last. "I've been in contact with some of Cola's former associates." Naya's voice came through the phone, her tone hurried. "There's a man named Musa. He's been the link between Cola and the people running his illegal operations. I've found out where he's hiding. He's waiting for Cola to make his next move. If you want to take him down, this is your chance." Adama's pulse quickened. "Where is he?" "Downtown Lagos," Nia replied, her voice trembling. "At an old warehouse on the edge of the city. It's where Cola's been storing some of his dirty money. But Musa, he's the key to everything. He's been handling the transactions for Cola's offshore accounts." Adama's mind was already working, calculating the next steps. This was the break she had been waiting for. If she could get to Musa, she could dismantle Cola's entire operation. But it was risky. She couldn't afford to go into this without knowing everything. "I need you to meet me there," Adama instructed Nia. "We'll get the evidence we need. This ends now." That evening, Adama, with Chiki by her side, made her way to the warehouse. The plan was simple: get in, gather the evidence, and get out before anyone could catch wind of their movements. But Adama was no fool. She knew that in a city like Lagos, nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. The people Cola dealt with were ruthless, and they wouldn't hesitate to do whatever it took to protect their secrets. As they neared the warehouse, Adama's heart raced. This was no longer just about taking back her empire. It was about exposing Cola for the fraud he truly was. And if it meant risking her safety to do so, she was prepared. They approached the building cautiously, sticking to the shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and imposing. From the outside, it looked abandoned, but Adama knew better. The real action was happening inside. They slipped through a side door, and the sound of their footsteps echoed in the cavernous space. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the remnants of old machinery and crates scattered around. In the far corner, a small group of men gathered around a table, counting stacks of cash. Musa was there, just as Nia had said. He was tall, with a grim expression on his face. He didn't seem to notice them as Adama and Chiki crept closer. "Let's get the evidence," Adama whispered to Chike, who nodded silently. They moved quickly, taking photos of the men and the cash piles, making sure to get everything they needed for the court case. But just as they were about to leave, the sound of a phone ringing broke the silence. Musa answered the call, his voice low and urgent. "Yes. Everything's ready. Cola's going to make the transfer soon. We just need to make sure he's got the right people in place." Adama's heart skipped a beat. Cola was making his next move, and Musa was involved in it. She had to act fast. Before she could think twice, she pulled Chike aside. "We've got everything we need. Let's get out of here." As they hurried back to the car, Adama couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She felt a sense of urgency, as though Cola's people were closing in on them. She turned to Chike, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't over. We need to get this evidence to the authorities before Cola has a chance to cover it up. But we can't do this alone. We'll need to get Nia involved." Chike looked at her, concern evident in his eyes. "But Adama, what if Cola's already preparing for the next phase? He knows you're coming for him. He won't go down easily." Adama's lips curled into a sly smile. "Let him try. He doesn't know who he's up against." Just as they were about to leave, a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of them. The doors opened, and a group of armed men stepped out, blocking their path. Cola's men had found them. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. Adama's heart pounded in her chest as the black SUV screeched to a halt in front of her and Cheek. The armed men who stepped out of the vehicle were no strangers to danger. Their cold, calculating expressions said it all. These were Cola's enforcers, and they weren't here to negotiate. Cheeky instinctively took a step forward, his hand moving to his jacket pocket where he kept his phone. But Adama grabbed his arm, stopping him. Her mind was racing, calculating the next steps. The evidence she had gathered in the warehouse was too valuable to lose. They had no choice but to play this carefully. One wrong move, and it could all be over. Adama's eyes flickered to the men blocking their path. They were armed, but they didn't seem to know who they were dealing with. Cola's men might have been ruthless, but Adama had fought far more dangerous battles in the business world. She knew how to think on her feet. She had to remain calm. "Cheek," she whispered, her voice steady despite the danger. "Stay calm. Let me handle this." Cheek looked at her, clearly concerned. "Adama, we need to get out of here. They've already found us. We can't afford to—" "I know what I'm doing." Adama cut him off. "Just trust me." The men were getting closer, their boots thudding heavily on the pavement. One of them, a tall man with a scar running across his cheek, stepped forward. His eyes scanned them both before finally locking onto Adama. "Well, well, well," the man said with a smirk, his voice grating. "If it isn't Mrs. Cola, or should I say, the woman who thinks she can take back what's not hers." Adama didn't flinch. She stared him down, her expression unwavering. "I don't think. I know." The man laughed, a low, mocking sound. "You think you've won? Cola's not going to let you walk away with his empire. You've crossed the line and now you're going to pay." Adama's gaze hardened. She knew this was just the beginning of a much larger battle, but she wasn't afraid. She had come too far to let anyone stand in her way now. "You'll regret underestimating me," she said, her voice cold as ice. "If Cola wants a war, then he's going to get one. And when I'm done, he'll have nothing left." The man's smirk faltered for a split second before he regained his composure. He motioned for the others to close in on them. But just as one of the men raised his hand, signaling for them to move forward, a sharp voice rang out from behind. "Stop right there." A tall figure stepped into view, a man Adama hadn't seen in years. His sharp suit and confident stride made him stand out in the dim light of the alley. It was Uchi. "What the hell are you doing here?" the man with the scar growled, his hand hovering near his gun. Uchi didn't seem fazed. He stepped forward, locking eyes with the scarred man. "You don't want to do this. Not here. Not now." Adama was stunned. "Uchi?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Uche gave her a calm smile, his eyes never leaving the armed men. "I'm here to make sure Cola's mistakes don't cost you any more than they already have." He turned to face the men blocking their way. "I suggest you let her go. She's not the one you should be worried about. Cola is." The scarred man's jaw clenched. "What are you playing at, Uche?" Uche didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, tossing it on the ground between them. It was clear that he was trying to buy time. Adama looked down at it and then back at Uche, confusion flashing across her face. Uche gave her a quick nod. "The truth is in there, Adama. You don't need to fight this alone anymore." Before anyone could react, Uche turned and walked toward the SUV, his calm demeanor hiding the weight of the situation. Adama watched as he opened the door and spoke briefly to the driver, who nodded and sped off into the night. She was left standing there with Cola's men, their eyes filled with suspicion and uncertainty. "Pick up the envelope, Adama," Cheeky urged, his voice low. Adama bent down, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked up the envelope. Inside was a stack of photographs, documents, and financial records. As she flipped through them, her breath caught in her throat. These weren't just any documents. These were proof of Cola's illegal activities, the exact connections he had tried to hide. There were bank statements from offshore accounts, connections to criminal organizations, and enough evidence to bring him down. Adama's mind raced as she processed the documents. This was everything she needed to destroy Cola. The fight wasn't just about business anymore. This was about bringing him to justice for everything he had done. And now, with these documents in her hands, she could do just that. Before Adama could even speak, the sound of a phone ringing echoed in the alley. It was hers. She quickly answered it, her pulse racing. "Adama," came the voice on the other end, and her blood ran cold. It was Kola. "Don't think for a second that this is over." Kola's voice was filled with venom. "You can have your little game, but I still own everything. You're nothing without me." Adama clenched her jaw, holding the phone tight. "Not anymore, Kola. I've got everything I need to destroy you, and I will. This is where your empire ends." Kola's laughter came through the phone, dark and mocking. "We'll see about that, Adama. We'll see." The call ended, leaving Adama staring at the phone in her hand. She knew this battle was far from over. Kola wasn't finished yet, but neither was she. As she stood there, looking at the documents in her hand, she realized the full scope of what was at stake. This was more than just a fight for control. It was a fight for survival. And Adama wasn't backing down. The call from Kola lingered in Adama's mind like a dark cloud, but she refused to let it consume her. He was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But now, with the evidence in hand, she had the upper hand. Adama had never been one to shrink from a fight, especially not one that was this personal. Kola's abandonment, his betrayal, it was all about to come crashing down on him, and she would be the one to deliver the blow. Cheek, who had been silent ever since the encounter with Kola's men, spoke up, his voice measured but filled with concern. "Adama, I've been thinking about what Kola said. We need to move quickly. He's going to come for you. He'll do anything to try and stop you from getting what's rightfully yours." Adama nodded, her eyes never leaving the stack of documents on the table. The photos, the bank records, the contracts, they were all the key to exposing Kola's illegal dealings. But there was more to this than just the empire. It was about ensuring Kola never rose to power again. "I know," she said softly, her voice cold and resolute. "But now we have something he can't ignore. These aren't just business records, Cheeky. These are his death sentence. Once I hand this over to the right people, his world will come crashing down. He'll be left with nothing." But as she spoke, her mind raced. She knew Kola was dangerous. He wouldn't go down easily. He had too much at stake. And Adama was certain that he wouldn't stop until he had either destroyed her or regained control of everything they had built together. Kola was ruthless. He had always been ruthless. She couldn't afford to underestimate him. "Get the authorities involved," Adama said after a long pause, "but do it discreetly. I need the police to act quickly. We can't afford a public spectacle just yet. Let's get this in front of the right people, but make sure it's airtight. No room for errors." Chika nodded, pulling out his phone to make the necessary calls. He could see the fire in Adama's eyes, the same fire that had fueled her success for so many years. But even Chiki, ever the optimist, knew this wasn't going to be easy. Kola was a powerful man, and Adama's fight wasn't just against him. It was against the system he had manipulated and the people who owed him loyalty. Meanwhile, across the city, Kola was seething. He had never imagined that his carefully constructed empire could be so easily threatened. The world he had built, his wealth, his power, the very foundation of his success, was slipping through his fingers like sand. The call from Adama had unsettled him. She was no longer the weak, sick woman he had left behind. She had turned into something far more dangerous. She had a fire in her eyes now, one that he couldn't ignore. He could feel her closing in on him, and it terrified him. Kola slammed his fist against the table, his anger bubbling over. "She's playing with fire," he muttered to himself, pacing the room. "She doesn't know who she's messing with." But Kola knew he couldn't afford to let Adama's move go unanswered. He had too much to lose. Layla, his mistress, had become his anchor. She had promised him that they would build their own future, one that didn't involve Adama. But Layla was also starting to grow uneasy. "She's getting too close, Kola," Layla said, her voice tinged with worry. You can't keep ignoring her. She'll ruin everything you've built. I've been thinking, maybe it's time for us to leave Lagos, leave it all behind. Kola shot her a sharp look. Leave? You want me to run? You think I'm going to let her take everything from me without a fight? Layla didn't flinch. I'm not saying run, but you've got to make a decision. You've been playing with fire for too long. She's got something you don't. Kola's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Information. You said she had nothing, but I'm telling you, she's got something that could take you down, and you're too proud to see it. Kola stood there in silence, his thoughts clouded with fury and fear. Layla was right about one thing. Adama was a dangerous adversary. But Kola wasn't ready to admit defeat. He wouldn't go down like this. Adama sat at her desk, looking over the documents once more. Each page, each piece of evidence was a weight on her shoulders, but she knew what she had to do. There was no turning back now. Her empire was on the line, and she was prepared to fight for it. Just as she was about to pick up the phone to make another call, her phone buzzed. A message. It was from Nia. Meet me tomorrow. I've got more info about Kola's hidden assets. Adama's heart skipped a beat. More? She whispered to herself. She had thought she had it all, but there was something about Nia's words that made her realize just how deep Kola's web of deceit ran. Where? Adama typed quickly. Same place. Midnight. Adama read the message twice. Midnight. There was no time to waste. If this was what she thought it was, then Kola's empire wasn't just built on illegal business deals. It was a house of cards, and all it would take was one push to bring it all down. Adama quickly composed herself, pushing aside the weight of everything she had been through. This was the final phase of her plan, the final confrontation. The next night, Adama and Chike arrived at the meeting spot, a dimly lit street corner near the outskirts of the city. As they approached, they saw Nia standing under the flickering streetlight, her face tense with worry. You're late, Nia said, her voice low and strained. I've been trying to get in touch with you, Adama. It's bigger than I thought. Kola, he's already making his move. He's moving assets, more than we thought. And if you don't act now, everything you've worked for will be gone. Adama stepped closer, her heart racing. What do you mean? What's happening? Nia's face turned pale. They've already started transferring funds, offshore accounts, the real money. It's all moving right now. And Kola knows everything you've discovered. He's on to you. Adama's mind whirled. Kola had made his move. He was already one step ahead. What do you think Kola is planning next? Can Adama stop him before it's too late? What will happen to their empire? Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on this high-stakes story. The night was darker than usual as Adama stood in the shadow of the streetlight, the weight of Nia's words settling in her chest. Kola was already making his move. The offshore accounts, the hidden assets, everything she had worked so hard to uncover was now slipping away from her grasp. We need to move fast, Adama said, her voice low but filled with determination. Cheek, get in touch with the authorities. We need to stop those transfers before they're completed. Cheek nodded, his fingers already flying over his phone, but Adama could see the doubt in his eyes. Adama, we may be too late. If he's already started the transfers, he's probably already covering his tracks. We need to be ready for anything. Adama didn't need to hear any more. She had made up her mind. Kola had crossed the line. He thought he could walk away from her and take everything he had built with her, but she wasn't going to let that happen. Not now. Not ever. I'm going to make him pay, she said, her voice steady, her eyes steely with resolve. Nia looked at her, her face a mix of worry and respect. You're serious, aren't you? But Adama, we can't do this alone. There are people who have already aligned themselves with Kola. If you expose him, they'll come after you. Adama didn't flinch. Let them come. I've fought harder battles than this. I've built an empire from the ground up. I won't let anyone take it from me. As the minutes ticked by, the sense of urgency grew. Nia had provided the last piece of the puzzle. Kola had been moving money to various accounts across the globe, but there was one thing Kola hadn't counted on. Adama had eyes everywhere, and those eyes had already flagged the most critical accounts. "This is our chance," Adama said, her voice sharp with clarity. "We need to act now, or Kola will have everything out of reach." Nia looked uncertain, but there was also a glimmer of belief in her eyes. "All right, I'll help you," she said, her voice steadying. "But we need to be careful. Kola won't go down quietly." Hours later, in the cold glow of a laptop screen, Adama and her team worked through the night. They tracked every financial transfer, every hidden account, and every legal loophole Kola had tried to exploit. The evidence was overwhelming. Kola's empire wasn't just built on real estate or legitimate business ventures. It was built on a web of corruption, money laundering, and shady deals. Adama's fingers flew over the keyboard as she authorized the legal motions to freeze Kola's accounts. The motion was filed, and as the system processed it, Adama felt a small sense of victory. But she knew it wasn't enough. Kola had too many people in his corner. He had allies who would do anything to protect him. This was just the beginning. Chiki was on the phone with the authorities, his face grim as he spoke to an official who was, according to Cheek, on Adama's side. But even that wasn't enough to guarantee success. The law had its limits, and Kola's influence stretched far beyond what they could control. As Adama looked at the screen, her mind raced. She needed something more, something that would force Kola to face the consequences of his actions. She needed leverage, something Kola couldn't ignore. And then it hit her. The will, the one thing Kola had never counted on. Adama reached into her drawer and pulled out the will once again. She had already gone through it dozens of times, but now she read it with a new purpose. She wasn't just the beneficiary, she was the legal owner of the empire. And if she could use this to her advantage, there was no way Kola could fight back. But then, her phone buzzed. A text message from Nia. "Adama, there's something you need to know. Kola's not the only one you should worry about. There are others in his circle who won't hesitate to stop you." Adama's blood ran cold. She had suspected this all along, but now it was confirmed. Kola wasn't working alone. There were others involved, people who would go to extreme lengths to protect him. Nia's next message came in quickly. "There's a man named Musa. He's the one behind Kola's shady dealings. If you want to destroy Kola's empire, you need to stop him. He's the link to everything." Musa. Adama's mind raced as she recalled the name. He had been involved in some of the darker parts of Kola's business empire. He was the one who handled the dirty money, the one who made sure everything went unnoticed. If she could get to Musa, she could bring everything down. But just as Adama was about to act on this new lead, the lights in her office flickered. Her phone buzzed again. She looked at the message, her heart sinking. "Adama, they're coming for you. It's too late. They've already made their move." She froze, her hand gripping the phone tightly. She turned to Cheek, her eyes wide with fear. "They know, Cheek. They know everything." Cheek's face was pale. "We need to get out of here, Adama. This isn't safe anymore." Adama's mind raced. If Kola's people were already closing in, she didn't have much time. She had to act fast. But her empire, the one she had fought so hard to reclaim, was slipping through her fingers. And now there was no turning back. "Where is Musa?" Adama asked, her voice shaking but resolute. "I need him. I need to end this now." Just then, the sound of car engines roared outside. The door to her office creaked open, and a shadow fell across the threshold. It wasn't Kola. It wasn't one of his men. It was someone far worse. A familiar voice, low and chilling, came from the doorway. "You thought you could take him down, Adama? You have no idea what you're up against." Adama's heart stopped. It was Musa. What does Musa want from Adama? Will she be able to stop him before it's too late? Who else is involved in Kola's empire? comment below, and share your thoughts with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on this heart-pounding story. Adama's heart raced as she faced the man who had been the key to Kola's criminal empire, Musa, the one person who could make or break her plan. She had been ready for Kola's betrayal, but she hadn't anticipated this. Musa, standing in her office doorway, a smug smile on his face, was the last person she wanted to see. "You've come this far, Adama," Musa said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "But you've underestimated the people Kola works with. You thought you could take him down, expose his empire, but you've been playing right into our hands." Adama's mind spun as she quickly assessed her options. The room was small, and there were no exits behind her, only the dark hallway leading to the street. Kola's men had already found her before. She couldn't afford to let that happen again. Musa's eyes glinted with malice as he stepped into the room, blocking the door. "You think you're the only one who's been pulling strings, huh? Kola's not the only one with secrets. But you've made a fatal mistake, Adama. You've played the game too hard. Now the only way you leave here is in pieces." Adama stood her ground, her spine straight, despite the cold fear crawling through her veins. She had worked too hard for this, too long to let Musa take everything away. "I know you, Musa. You've always been Kola's shadow, the man who does his dirty work. But you're not in control. You never were." Musa laughed, the sound echoing in the small room. "You still don't get it, do you? Kola may have been weak, but he had power, and I've spent years building that power for him. You think just because you have some papers and documents that you've won? You're wrong." Adama's fingers clenched into fists, her body ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. But she knew that she couldn't act rashly. The odds were against her. She had no backup, and Musa's men were likely outside waiting for a signal. Her best chance was to outsmart him, to turn the tables before he even realized it. "You think I don't understand what's at stake?" Adama's voice was low, calm, but each word carried a weight of finality. "You've been a tool, Musa, a pawn in Kola's game, but you're not playing with someone who's afraid anymore. I've made my move, and now you're going to regret underestimating me." Musa took a step forward, his face inches from hers. "You think you've won? You're playing with fire, Adama. You're going to burn, and I'll be there to watch it all happen." But just as he moved closer, Adama's hand shot out, grabbing the envelope she had hidden on her desk. The one filled with all the evidence that Kola had no idea she had. She flashed it in front of him, her eyes never leaving his. "You see this?" Adama asked, her voice steady. "This is your undoing. This will bring you down faster than any of Kola's so-called power ever could." Musa's eyes darted to the envelope, his gaze betraying a flicker of panic. But before he could react, Adama stepped forward, blocking his view of the evidence. "I don't need to fight you, Musa," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I just need to make sure this gets into the right hands." Musa's eyes widened as realization dawned. "No." Adama's lips curled into a confident smile. "Yes. This information will take down not just Kola, but everyone who's been helping him. You think Kola's untouchable? He's nothing but a puppet, and I've just pulled his strings." The tension in the room was unbearable. Adama could feel the weight of the moment. This was it. This was the final confrontation. Kola's world was crumbling, and there was nothing Musa could do to stop it. But just as Musa took a step back, his eyes darkening, the door behind Adama slammed open and two men rushed in, guns raised. "Adama, get down!" Cheek's voice rang out, but the men had already positioned themselves between her and the door. The gunmen were quick, their eyes scanning the room, but Adama wasn't frozen by fear. She wasn't going to let this slip away. With one swift motion, she grabbed the envelope and slid it under the nearby filing cabinet, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't going to let them destroy her evidence, not now. "Take her!" one of the gunmen yelled, moving toward her. Adama's mind raced as she calculated her next move. She knew she had no time to waste. She was surrounded, and the only way out was to act fast. But just before the gunman reached her, a loud crash echoed from the hall outside, followed by shouting and the unmistakable sound of sirens. Adama's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "They've found us!" Cheeky shouted, his voice urgent. "The authorities are here. We need to move now." For a split second, the tension in the room broke. The gunmen hesitated, their heads snapping toward the door. This was Adama's chance. In one fluid motion, she dove behind the nearest desk, the gunman's attention momentarily diverted. "Move!" she shouted to Cheek as he pulled out his phone and made a final call to their allies. The sound of sirens was growing louder, and Adama knew this was her last opportunity. The gunman, now panicked, scrambled to react, but it was too late. Adama stood and bolted toward the door, Chike right behind her. The gunmen aimed their weapons, but as the sound of the approaching police grew louder, they hesitated. Adama didn't wait for them to decide. She burst through the door, her heart racing as she ran down the narrow hallway, Cheek at her heels. The street outside was chaotic. Police cars, sirens blaring, had surrounded the building. In the distance, she saw the black SUV parked on the corner, ready to make its escape. But it was too late for Kola. The game was over. As Adama and Cheeky were ushered into a waiting police car, Adama felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She had done it. The evidence was safe, and the authorities were on their way to take Kola and his associates down. She had reclaimed what was hers. As the police car sped away, Adama received another call. The screen lit up, revealing a message from Nia. "I got your back, Adama," the message read, "but it's not over yet. There's one last thing you need to know. Kola's not the only one in this game. There's someone higher up, someone you haven't seen yet." Adama's heart sank as the realization hit her. There was still more to uncover, more secrets to expose. Kola wasn't the final piece of this puzzle. And the person behind it all? The real puppet master? Adama had no idea who it was, but she was about to find out. What do you think? Who is the person behind Kola's empire? What will Adama do next? Comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on this explosive story.